Bible, and I hope you do. Open it up to Matthew chapter 13. Gretchen's going to come and read our text today. Y'all be gracious with her. I've changed the text on her 3 times this week. So I didn't make it easy on her.
I'll read from your Bible if that's okay.
You can? Yeah, starts right there. No, push that button. You got to hold it for a little longer. We'll figure this out.
As he said, I'm reading from Matthew 13, verses
10 through 17.
10 through 17.
Hold on this way. I don't hear
Am
nobody.
I too loud?
No, I was just waiting. No, I was waiting for everybody to stop turning.
Oh.
All right. If you found your place in Matthew chapter 13, say word. Let's get into the word so the word can get into us.
Then the disciples came up and asked him, "Why are you speaking to them in parables?" He answered, "Because the secrets of the kingdom of heaven have been given for you to know, but it has not been given to them. For whoever has, more will be given to him, and he will have more than enough. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. That is why I speak to them in parables. Because looking they do not see, and hearing they do not listen or understand. Isaiah's prophecy is fulfilled in them, which says, 'You will listen and listen, but never understand. You will look and look, but never perceive. For this people's hearts has grown callous. Their ears are hard of hearing, and they have shut their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and turn back, and I would heal them. Blessed are your eyes because they do see, and your ears because they do hear. For truly I tell you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see the things you see, but didn't see them, to hear the things you hear, but didn't hear them." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Thank you, Gretchen. Wonderful. You got to hold it down, too.
Want me to put that?
Yeah, you just set it on the speaker right there. That'll be good. Just for future reference, anyone who reads, just put it there. Can y'all remember that? There we go. So we're going to start a new series today, titled Seeing Jesus. Seeing Jesus. And here, let me read what I feel led to teach over and speak on over this series. Seeing Jesus is a series about seeing Jesus for who he says he is. Seeing his kingdom for what he says it's like. Seeing ourselves the way the Father does. And seeing the world the way we ought. The way we ought. This is what I'm going to attempt to accomplish, and I feel led to speak to us. And in this text, you hear, he says, blessed are your eyes because they do see. In other words, you've been given eyes to see. Here's the other part about this. He gives this prophecy in Isaiah where he says, they've shut their eyes. They hear, but they don't really hear, right? And he gets to the end and he says, like, they've grown calloused. They didn't wake up not being able to hear and not being able to see. They have grown callous. What makes us callous? What we're talking about is spiritual formation. This may be an unfamiliar term to you, but here's what I would tell you. Spiritual formation is not something you opt into. It's something that you are experiencing every single day of your life. Every moment of every day, every decision that somebody else makes around you, the culture in which we currently exist in, it is, make no mistake about it, these things are forming us. So when we talk about spiritual formation around here, we're talking about intentional formation and being intentional about it. You can either have unintentional formation or intentional formation. Unintentional formation will shape you according to the world. Paul would say it this way: you're being conformed to this world. It's outside pressure forming you into what they want you to be. And Jesus presents a different way, spiritual formation, transformation, not conformity, but a transformation from the inside out. It can be said this way in the parables: becoming people who have eyes to see. So here's the deal. What we need to be able to develop is eyes to see, but we are all being grown and developed to have calluses on us where it's hard for us to see. So what we need is what maybe we would call counter formation, because we're being formed, make no mistake about it, and we need a counter formation. And this is exactly what Jesus shows up. And in his teachings and in his parables, he presents a way of transformation or being formed that's counter to everything else. It's counter to everything else. He would say it this way: I've given you eyes to see, and I'm telling you stories so that you can see. So we've been formed. It's not something you opt into. It's something that is in progress at all times, okay? So, here's what I want to talk about today. Let's see if my clicker will work. It's not working. Oh, it just worked, didn't it? There we go. Seeing Jesus. Okay, it's working now. Here's the title of today's message: Hidden Skeptics and Priceless Pearls. Hidden Skeptics and Priceless Pearls. I'm going to read another text, still in Matthew chapter 13. Still in Matthew chapter 13, and it's one of these parables. Here's what it says in verse 44. Jesus is teaching, and he says, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure buried in a field that a man found and reburied. Then in his joy, he goes and sells everything he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. When he found one priceless pearl, he went and sold everything he had and bought it. So, here's the question. Well, let me say a quote real quick. Oscar Wilde once said that we live in a culture of materialism and secularism, and because of that, we know the price of everything, and we know the value of nothing. That's because the formation out there that we're being conformed to is a secular society rooted in what I talked about a couple of weeks ago, the fact and value divide. And facts are prices. We can watch the markets and watch our, what are they called, like your IRA or your whatever. See, I don't even know what these things are. We in the military, we have a TSP. We have that, okay? All right, your retirement. Let me say it that way. Your retirement. We know our retirement fund, and as it's fluctuating, and we know the price of everything. We know about the monster from Jekyll Island, the inflation monster. We know these prices, but we don't understand value. We miss what is actually valuable. Values. What is the thing that is to be valued? What is the thing that is worthy? We need to know what's what. We need to determine what is what when we think about this. And last week, if you were here, one of the things that I said was the resurrection of Jesus tells us something. It claims that you are worth the wonder. The miracle of Jesus' resurrection, you are worth it. Jesus came and said, you are worth, to purchase you, the price in which I have to pay is to die on a cross. And you're worth it. You're worth it. That's really hard for us to wrestle with and grasp. And Jesus, in this text that we read, that Gretchen read for us, he says, listen, like we've become cows. He's talking to the Israel, like, listen, these people, they've had the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, their entire lives. They knew it. Listen, let's be real. They knew it better than we did. And they missed it. They didn't see. So my question is, are we going to walk around with the hubris and the arrogance that we're like, oh yeah, we got it. We got it. What are we missing? What are we blind to? What are we not seeing? A guy by the name of Bernard of Clairvaux, about 1,000 years ago, he started about 70 monasteries. And he talks about what he observed over his years of ministering to people. And he points out what he calls the stages of love. The stages of love. And it's very eye-opening when we begin to think about this. He said the first stage of love is love of ourself for the sake of ourself. Right? This is children. Right? They love themselves. They're going after and getting for the sake of themselves. They love themselves for the sake of themselves. Right? This is a very self-centered. And it's okay. Babies are supposed to be that way. Right? But we're adults. The majority of us in here. So it's good to be there. Right? When it's appropriate. This is a time when a person is only aware of themselves, right? It's like they're in the center of the universe and everything revolves and rotates around that, right? And this is how children are, and that's okay when they're children. Problem is, we live in a secular society, which is relative, which means you define everything, which puts you at the center, not Jesus at the center, and welcome to the shenanigans that has taken place. Right? This is the ideal of a secular society. You determine it all. This is childish, is what it is. I'll be frank. I'll move on because I think you get that. That's the first stage that he witnessed and saw. We all move through these stages of love. Well, we should at least. The second stage of love, as he says, is love of God for the sake of self. The majority of us, the overwhelming majority of us, this is where we met Jesus for the first time. We were confronted with our own sin and our own brokenness, and we were like, need state, I need something. And Jesus is presented as the one who offers something in response to that. A beautiful picture. And we're like, that's better than what I have right now. I'll take that. Right? And so it's a love of God for the sake of self. We step into love, but it's on the basis of what he can do and can provide for us. Not a bad thing. This is good. Here's what I can tell you. A lot of people get stuck in this one. And let me just lean in here for a second. If your prayers consist of asking God for things and that's all, you're probably in stage 2 and you've not developed past that. It's a good stage to be in. It's a beautiful stage. Early believers, this is where they're at, right? Mesmerized by what God has provided for them. It's a beautiful thing. But here's the problem. If you stay in this place for long enough, eventually something's going to happen where it feels like he's not providing anymore. What the ancients called the dark night of the soul. And at that point, if this is your only understanding of God's love, is through what he can provide for you, you throw your hands up and say, well, God's not loving. Maybe you're there. You ever met anyone? You ever met that person? You ever been that person at some point in time in your life? Yeah, me too. The third stage of love is love of God for the sake of God. Love of God for the sake of God. This is when we begin to sense that God is valuable outside of what he provides for us. It's like what happens if you have eyes to see when you walk out this door and you look at that mountain range and you're just like, God, you didn't have to be this cool to create that beautiful scenery for me. You didn't have to be that great, but you chose to do that. Anybody who's like a scientist or a science teacher or anything like that, and you begin to delve into the complexities of the animal world and the animal kingdom, and like you just start like he made a platypus. You know, like, wow, he didn't have to do that. That's so cool. You know, it's like, it's kind of like, even in this place, it's kind of childlike a little bit. You're just mesmerized by how amazing God is in his creation. You're just like, God, I love you just because you're you. And like you begin to have eyes to see outside of your own self, right? You begin to, your vision begins to expand and you see things better. Proverbs 25 is one of my favorite Bible verses in all of Scripture. It says, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter, and it's the glory of kings to investigate a matter. So it's God's weightiness, his value is that he conceals things for us to go and discover. And this is that stage where you're just like discovering new things about you. Oh my God, you're just amazing. This is so cool. And you would think that third stage, that's the stage, right? But Bernard of Clairvaux goes on to explain a fourth stage, the most mature stage. And he calls it the love of self for the sake of God. Now, on first hearing that, you're like, whoa, that seems selfish. That seems, we're going backwards here. This is self-centered. But this is exactly what Stu is tapping into when we sing the song, You're Enough. When you're in the place where you love God for the sake of God, you begin to understand how beautiful and wonderful he is. And then you begin to understand his image better. And then the revelation hits. I'm created in his image. And the first story of the Bible says all these things out here that are blowing my mind, God called them good. But then when he formed me with his hand, he called that very good. Do you have eyes to see? And you may think, yeah, that's easy. But here's what I know about every one of you, because as I always say, you may be like me, I don't know, but I have a sneaky suspicion that you're a lot more like me than you would probably like to admit. We all have some things about us that we would like to change. For some of us, it's physical. I'd like to be maybe 5'11" rather than 5'7". Sometimes I'm like, God, were you aware when you made me? Sometimes it's physical. Sometimes it's personality traits. Sometimes it's intellectual, academic. I wish I was as smart as that person, but gifted as that person. Skill sets. And no, we probably wouldn't say it. You know, God, you hosed it up when you made me. But if we were really honest, that's kind of how we feel about it. If I could only, right, fill in the blank. If I was like they were in fill in the blank. Anybody? We have negative feelings towards ourselves. So my question is, where does this come from? If it's true for all of us to some degree or another, what's up with that? Well, in Matthew chapter 13, right before the parable of the hidden treasure and the priceless pearl, which I'm going to get to in a moment, says this: Jesus told the crowds all these things in parables, and he did not tell them anything without a parable, so that what was spoken through the prophet might be fulfilled. Listen, I will open my mouth in parables. I will declare things kept secret from the foundation of the world. So if you want to understand the parables, you got to go back to the beginning. is what Jesus is telling us. So let's just go back to the beginning. You're welcome. Genesis chapter 1, 2, and 3. In this story, Adam and Eve, they're in a garden. Everything's good. They have plenty. They have abundance. And the serpent tempts them and says, oh, no, God's keeping something from you. You need to eat of this. And so they decide for themselves that they're going to choose what's tov and ra, what's right and wrong for themselves. And they eat of the fruit. And then God comes, as he normally did, walking through the garden in the cool of the day. And where's Adam and Eve? They're hiding. They're hiding. God is the one who's calling out and seeking. They're the ones hiding. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure buried in a field. Buried in a field. Hidden in a field. That a man found and reburied. Then in his joy he goes and sells everything he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. And when he found one priceless pearl, he went and sold everything he had and bought it. What's what? What's worth what? What are we in this story? I said last week, worth is determined by what someone is willing to pay for something. And Jesus said he gave it all for you. He was willing to pay it all. So when you read this parable, I think the best way to read it is that you and I are the treasure and the priceless pearl. Jesus meets this guy named Zacchaeus. He's like, hey, bro, come down from that tree. We're going to your house, man. It's dinner time. And he begins to share all about the kingdom that he has brought in. And Zacchaeus is mesmerized, and he's like, I need a life change. I want that. And Jesus, at the end of that story, says something, and says, Jesus told him, for the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which is lost. That treasure that's been buried in a field, that pearl, that priceless pearl, Jesus came for that. You may think, oh, I'm not priceless. Well, Yahweh is an infinite God. We talked about this in men's night the other night when he gives his name, I am the I am. One of the things that he's stating there is there's not enough words and descriptions to give a proper name that would satisfy what I'm like. Here's what I'm going to be. I will be what I will be for you. You just walk with me, trust me, and you're going to see me, experience me, and I'm going to blow your mind, and no words, there's no words for it. That's at least in part. He's an infinite God. And here's what he's done. He said, I'm going to create image bearers of me. I'm going to look at them. They're very good. So if God is infinite and he's created little finite images of himself, how many can he make before he's actually given the full expression of himself? There's no amount. So what that means is each and every one of us have a particular way that God is wanting to express who he is and bear his image to the world that no other human being ever created can express to the world. That seems pretty priceless. It's like one of a kind. This is what God says about you and I. I'm over here complaining that I'm 5'7", and he's like, bro, you're priceless. Pause. He looks at Adam and Eve and tells them that they're very good. He creates them, right? Does the whole thing, rib, human beings, male, female, here they are. And before they ever do anything, he says, very good. So what I'm saying is not, you don't deserve it based on your actions. You're not priceless because of what you've done. This is what God says about us. You and I are the treasure. We're the priceless pearl. Jesus is the man and the merchant. I'm not really keeping up with my slides very good today. Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 17 says this, the Lord your God is among you, a warrior who saves. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will be quiet in his love, and he will delight in you with singing. In the parable, it says that then in his joy, he goes and sells everything. In his joy, it was the joy of his heart to give it all up for you. So the question then is, if we're the priceless pearl, we're the treasure, how did we get buried? And how did we get hidden? Let's go back to Genesis. When God walks in the cool of the day, why are they hiding from him? What's going on in their minds? I'll just simply put it this way. They doubt his good intentions toward them. They don't think that when he shows up in their presence, that it's going to work out very good for them. And that's true for me and you. We've went to the hiding place because if we're really, really honest, we're like, God, I'm really messed up, jacked up. I've done this. This has been done to me. This has been my experience. This is my family story, so on and so forth, right? I've got this. I fill in the blank, right? And so if I really experience God's presence, he shows up in the cool of the day, I better put some fig leaves on. And Jesus comes and says, the kingdom of heaven is like its king. And this king, when he comes, has good intentions towards you. Good intentions. Luke chapter 1, verse 68 says this, blessed is the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has visited and provided redemption for his people. This word visited is not a very good translation. It's actually a connection of two Greek words, that epe and skepsado. Epe means this, to move towards someone or something with helpful intent. And skepsado is the word that we get skeptic from. So when you put these two words together, this is what Jesus is saying. This is what God is saying here to us. Blessed is the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has moved toward the skeptics with helpful intent and provided redemption for his people. We're the skeptics. We are the skeptics in hiding. In hiding. Jesus has good intentions for us. He has good intentions for us. And we are the hidden skeptics. We're the treasure and the priceless pearl, but we've not been lost because of something else. We've been lost because we went hiding. God's never been hiding from humanity. You can go back to Proverbs. Wisdom has been calling out on the streets daily. And we don't have ears to hear or eyes to see. You and I are the hidden skeptics. Just like Adam and Eve, we entered hiding because we did not trust God's good intentions towards us. We, because of our sin, we can't see our value. we think. Somebody got a $1 bill or something in their wallet right here? Anybody? Anybody got? I'm going to steal it. You're not getting it back. My man, Tyrell's coming. This has been done before. This is nothing fancy. This is nothing fancy, right? This is a good one because this one's kind of rugged. It's been used. Right? Like, this is just an example, but like, I mean, this thing's weathered. You know what doesn't determine the value? The size and shape and color of this thing, because the $100 bill is the same color, size, and shape as this one. Like, the thing that determines the value of this dollar is who's on it. The image in which is portrayed on it. Doesn't matter how crinkled up it gets, how worn it is, it still holds the same value. Because George Washington's on it, right? That's who that is. Yeah, on the $1, Washington. Yep, Washington. And the same's true for us. We think because of our sin and our brokenness, right? Like we don't have the value that we once had. And Jesus comes on the scene and he's like, listen, here's what my kingdom's like. It's like me because I'm the king. The kingdom is a reflection of its king. And he says, I view you as a priceless pearl and a treasure. And I know you've been used and abused and things have happened to you. There's brokenness, but you're priceless because, listen, if you just let me have, in my hand, I'll do something amazing in your life. And you ask, well, God, why should I give my life to you? Like, why should I come out of hiding? Why should I come out of hiding? And he says, because I bought you with a price. While you were yet a sinner, you weren't looking for me. I'm here. Like, the funny thing is, like, you think you're hiding. He knows where you're at. He's like walking through there. He's like, hey, I know you're just over there on the other side of that fig leaf. Like, that's kind of silly. Come out of hiding. The kingdom of heaven is like its king. King Jesus moves toward the hidden skeptics with helpful intentions. King Jesus moves toward the hidden skeptics with helpful intentions. So what I'm trying to tell you is, come out of the hiding place. You don't have to hide from it. Now, it is also true that Scripture tells us to count the cost because it's going to cost you something. Jesus is going to put you, he's going to put you on a journey of formation. What I talked about earlier, counter formation. Where he's going to give you eyes to see and ears to hear. And it's going to start changing you. And we're going to have to start hanging up on some stuff and saying hello to some other stuff. As Stu put it. It's going to cost us something. But listen to me. What has been paid for us is of greater value than anything that will ever be asked of you. Paul would say it this way, and he goes straight towards the sufferings. He says, the suffering in which we experience in this world pales in comparison to the glory of the far-off land that C.S. Lewis talks about, the new heaven and a new earth. Says, listen, there's coming a day where the greatness of our experience with the Lord will have us reflecting back on the suffering that we experienced here, and we'll kind of giggle. Did you know pearls? Well, one, the new heaven and the new earth there's a creative, artistic expression biblically of a picture of this. And it says that there's these gates, and it's representative of the 12 tribes of Israel, which is what we're grafted into, right? And it says that these gates are made, each of the 12 gates are one pearl. So it's one pearl. Imagine It's one pearl so big that it actually can make a gate out of it. Pearl is the only jewel that is made through suffering. Sand gets into a clam, and the pain and the response to the pain is what shapes the pearl. Jesus comes on the scene and he says, listen, if you'll give me your little fragment of sand and you'll respond the way I respond and you'll walk with me, I'll make a pearl out of this thing. Something that is absolutely beautiful. He doesn't minimize the pain and the suffering. He just promises to redeem it. As Zephaniah says, he's a warrior who moves with redemption. Come out of hiding. He's not going to expose you. He's going to heal you. King Jesus moves toward the hidden skeptics with helpful intentions. So come out of hiding. As Stu and them come, I'm going to ask us to stand and pray. I pray this morning that maybe a little bit of the callousness that's on our heart kind of broke away. And maybe in new light, we got eyes to see ourselves and others in a little bit different light. More in line with what Jesus would say. So let me ask you, what are you hiding behind? John Eldridge once said that when you meet a man, and it applies to women too, you meet an elaborate fig leaf. This thing we've crafted to put distance, to hide from people from our true self. And we're going to talk more about this next week. The true self versus the false self. What is it? What have you created? What have you presenting out here? Jesus says, listen, just let me make you some clothes. They'll be a lot better. What are you hiding? What are you hiding behind? I'm trusting that the Lord will reveal that to you this morning. Let's pray together.